Hey guys, so today I'm gonna talk about the best 2019 movies that I've watched. A little disclaimer, these are my favorite movies of the year, so for me they're the best. So without much further ado or too much introduction, you guys know what this is, so let's jump right into it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. When I was first watching this movie, I was really confused about what this movie was going to be about. Whenever I watch a movie, there's usually an end game in sight, but this movie just kept throwing in different things and going in different directions. But by the end of it, I was genuinely satisfied. I feel that if you're watching this movie for the plot, you're gonna have a really bad time. I want to rewatch it and have that in my mind now that I know how things are gonna play out. At the crux of the story, it's a character study of a washed up actor and a stunt double who can't find work due to allegations that he killed his wife. On top of that, the setting of Los Angeles is of course really important to the plot, and it's like Quentin Tarantino's love letter to the city, especially in this golden age of Hollywood. But Tarantino also does an interesting thing where he seems to try and demystify certain aspects of the Hollywood lore, especially in the scenes with Bruce Lee. I really like both Leo and Brad Pitt's characters, especially Brad Pitt's, just because the movie gives them the most to do. Marriage Story. I'm not sure what I could say that hasn't already been said by the masses. Noah Baumbach knocked himself right out of the park with this movie. He seems to be able to get to the core of this couple's issues and explore it in an engaging way. He also really knows how to get a great performance from Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, especially Adam Driver, who I feel oftentimes is a great actor, especially when he's being led by an equally great director. The music is also really great and it adds to the atmosphere and it adds to the theme of this fantasy breaking apart. The Noah Baumbach movies that I have seen that focus on divorce and breakups tend to focus a lot on the children's perspective, like in The Whale and the Squid and Margaret at the Wedding. So it was a nice change of pace to see him this time around tackling the subject matter purely from the adult's perspective, which lends itself to feel more mature. Two Popes. This is a movie that not a lot of people were into. It boils down to a pope and a priest having a conversation, which, to be fair, does sound like a boring plot, but the brilliance of it comes from the performances of Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins, where at times I felt like I was watching some old found footage reel from a documentary. They portray two men that are really the opposite of each other, and it was great seeing them play off of each other as they discuss their different theologies. The cinematography was great, the performances were excellent, the dialogue kept me engaged. The movie really picks up when it delves into the earlier life of Pope Francis and into the different tragedies of his life. And Midsommar. After watching and enjoying Hereditary, I was looking forward to seeing what Ari Aster would do with Midsommar. I was highly impressed. I felt that he improved a lot in the way that he worked with themes that he had previously worked with in Hereditary, such as grief, loss of family, and regret. I really related a lot with Florence Pugh's character, not because of the tragic event that she goes through in the beginning, but in the way that she goes about dealing with it, trying to lean on her partner for support. It's also horrifyingly gruesome as each graphic image that we're exposed to just keeps getting worse as the movie goes on. Several critics were saying that this movie was slow and a bit boring. I can sort of understand the slow part, but I was never bored by it. I think that the premise of finding out what this cult was and what they were trying to do kept me engaged and interested in the story. The Irishman, a movie that everyone and their fathers were anticipating. I was a bit intimidated coming into it due to its runtime. I was originally gonna watch it in parts, but the moment I started watching it, I was glued to my seat and I watched it in one sitting. I feel like this was a movie that was very personal to Martin Scorsese. A lot of people seem to be clinging on to a theme that Scorsese is trying to demystify the gangster life, but I think the bigger theme, the most important one, seems to be the importance of family. Robert De Niro's performance really encapsulates this theme, especially in the latter half of this movie. I was also really mesmerized by the performances of Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, whose characters couldn't be further apart and different from each other. Joe Pesci's character was more of a behind-the-scenes type of guy, while Al Pacino played Jimmy Hoffa, a charismatic guy who is used to putting on a performance, and I liked how they were contrasted in the way they treated Frank's daughter, and how she responded differently to them. The book that this is based off of, I Heard You Paint Houses, felt more like an expose on who the killer of Jim Hoffa was, and so I'm glad Scorsese took the route that he did with this movie. I wish I could have seen it in theaters, but unfortunately no theaters near me were playing it, which kind of sucks. But at least I saw it on Netflix, and I got to see Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino all together in one movie, and it was great. Number 4, The Farewell. This movie was about Billy, a young woman played by Awkwafina, who finds out that her grandmother has cancer, which the family is keeping a secret from her as to not worry her and possibly make the situation worse. I didn't watch this movie when it originally came out in theaters, so by the time that I did get my hands on it, it had been heavily overhyped by film Twitter. But even then, with my expectations being so high for this movie, I wasn't let down, especially with its exploration of cultural clashes. It's interesting to get these perspectives of immigration because we rarely see them in movies, especially in a realistic way. Billy's parents decided to uproot their lives to the United States when Billy was young, but at what cost? Billy has grown distant from her extended family and to her culture to the point where she has to relearn or learn certain things again. And the movie seems to ask, was it worth it? And all of those things seem to come on the surface when everyone reunites once again under the pretense of someone getting married so they can be together. And I feel like it's a movie that everyone should watch, so I'm not gonna say too much about it, but it's a movie that brings a lot of elements together that makes it one of the sweetest and emotional movies of this year, and it's one of the better A24 films. Ad Astra. Right off the bat, I just want to say that if you have daddy issues, this movie will likely hit a chord with you. Ad Astra was a movie that I felt was very wrongly advertised to what it ended up being. It was a really quiet, reflective, and somber experience with phenomenal performances from Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. I wish they could have gotten at least an Oscar nomination for their roles. The movie is about Brad Pitt's character having to find his father, who was believed to be dead after he went into deep space looking for alien life, and the government lost contact with him and his fleet. One of the things I really liked about it was that it sort of demystifies space, unlike other types of space sci-fi movie, where we're going out of space doesn't solve humanity's problems, it creates new ones. So we sort of see how there are space pirates and the moon station has sort of become the ghetto and people are out there in spaceships doing tests on animals. The movie seems to say that we're going out there or we're looking beyond the stars for a solution when we should really be focusing on our home planet. And I don't know, there was just something I enjoyed about Ad Astra, and it's probably in my top 5 favorite space movies. Ford versus Ferrari. I watched this movie right on the day that it came out. When I walked out of the theaters, I couldn't help but think that this was the movie of the year. I like biopic movies, but I especially like those that go the extra mile and the ones that are essentially Oscar baits, which is what this is. I wish it would have gotten nominated in more categories because I think this film deserves more recognition, especially Christian Bale's performance. The car races in this were so exciting that they had me gripping my armrests and on the edge of my seat. I've never really been into racing movies, but I like this one a lot because I feel like it's about so much more. The movie really made me feel for Christian Bale's character, who just wanted recognition for the work that he was doing, but was constantly being denied that. I could relate to that because those issues stemmed from his own hot-headed behavior, which caused him to constantly self-sabotage himself. The actor who portrayed the main antagonist in this did a really good job because I just hated that character and it drove me crazy whenever he got his way. I think that out of all the movies that are on my list, this is probably the least polarizing one because everyone just seems to like it or think that it's good. And now for my number 1 pick, Little Women. I don't know how Greta Gerwig did this, but she did it. She took this novel from the 1800s and adapted it for modern audiences in such a way that the story felt new and fresh. I'm glad that Greta Gerwig decided to juxtapose the different time periods in the Marches family because I felt that had more of an emotional resonance to it. We have these scenes in the past where the four girls have all this ambition and talent, and then in the next scene where it shows us their future, we see how things don't exactly go the way they imagined it to be. The film was beautiful and it was perfectly casted, and the performances just bring the emotional depth of the movie to the next level. In my opinion, this is my favorite movie of 2019, and I can see myself revisiting it several more times. I kind of wish that this were a miniseries from Netflix or from BBC that took its time telling the story, because I just wanted to spend more time with these characters portrayed by these actors, being directed by Greta Gerwig. And there you have it. That's my top 10 list of my favorite of the best films of 2019. So for anyone that was curious, now you know. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time.